دایی یه فرصت خوب حالا پشت مدافعان خداداد عزیزی توی دروازه گل برای ایران خداداد عزیزی باز هم روی زمین گشت سرداران بود و توی دروازه بود گل به نام آزمونده برای ایران
بزنه کریم انصاری گل توی دروازه کریم انصاری دروازه پرتغال باز شد
علی دایی سام توپ توی دروازه
اشتباه حرکت از کوچان نژاد فرصت برای کوچان نژاد توی دروازه گل برای ایران.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bezan podcast. My name is Sina. The usual Sina is not available for this episode, so I've been drafted in, hoping that you wouldn't notice the difference. But as always, I'm joined by two great friends. Arya, great to speak to you and great to have you on as always.
Thanks a lot, Sina, for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's good to hear you hosting for once, giving me a little bit of a break from this side of things. And yeah, good to have Babak here as well.
No, of course, Babak, of course, as Arya mentioned, good to have you on. It's been a while. Always happy to speak to you.
Yeah, I'm at the veteran stage of my career, so I have to pick the pods that I can participate in. Good to be here, though.
I also want to add, it is our 8th year now. We're approaching our 8th year of the podcast. You guys were the ones who started it, so you know it's kind of like a full circle moment now.
No, absolutely. I it's funny you mentioned that because I still remember the first few episodes that we did. Was it back in 2013 with Babak Pasha? But it's been quite a journey.
2014 before the World Cup.
Yeah, just before the World Cup 2014, I think. So a shout out to Pejman and Pasha, who are not here today.
Of course, and we hope that they're doing well as well. Now, there's a matter of this episode, and we've got a lot on the agenda. So in this episode, we'll be previewing the Iran friendly against Algeria, which will be played on Sunday, the 12th of June at Saemian bin Hamad Stadium in Doha at 9 p.m. I believe. Arya can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
on that
9 p.m. Doha time. Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll discuss the squad list, the lack of preparation games, which seems to be a theme. Actually, I think if we go back to 8 years and listen to the episodes in preparation for a tournament, the lack of preparation games is always something that is discussed. We'll hear from Walid Ziani, an Algerian football journalist from DZfoot, who spoke to Arya regarding the Algerian camp, and also Arya recorded a very interesting interview with Team Melli assistant coach Mario Tot. I would highly recommend that you listen to that. It provides great insight, and as always, Arya asks the difficult questions. Now, Arya, I'm going to come to you firstly in terms of the squad. Can you give us a breakdown of the squad, who's been missing, who is included, and is there any surprises?
Yeah, obviously, Ansari if I was left out for the first time, I think, under Skocic. He had an eye issue. It was like a freak accident in training. Actually, not in training, it was during his birthday in the camp. Essentially got his eye poked out by a bit of wood. And now he's fine, but he wasn't really playing that much because of that in his team, AK Athens. And because of that, he wasn't called up. Purali Ganji, of course, hasn't played it's almost a year now. He's now signed for Persepolis, so hopefully he gets more game time. Salman Qudus is injured, as is Walid Amini, who just had surgery. Shahab Zahedi also had surgery on his shin bone. I think he broke it. Minor kind of fracture on his shin bone. Khalid as well had a minor injury. He just signed for Al Ahly in Qatar. He will be teammates with Kanoni, who is suspended for these next two friendly matches if we play another one in September. And in the last couple, Kaveh Rezai, of course, has not been playing much this season. Mehdi Qaidi, similar. It hasn't really had a lot of game time in Dubai. And Milad Mohammadi, who was called up, but then got COVID very early on in the camp and then was replaced by Abulfaz Jalali.
Thank you for that, Babak. Did you notice anything different, or did you want to see anyone specific? And also, I've got a question for you with especially the transfer that Arya mentioned now with Choja Khalilzadeh joining Al Ahly. How crucial do you think that would be to have the partnership of Khalilzadeh and Kanani playing together at a club level? And would that somewhat cement their place as starting centre-backs in the World Cup?
First of all, I'd like to say a couple of things about the players that are missing, especially the ones who are technically, let's say, not injured, like Ansari Farad. I listened to the interview with Tot, and it sounded like he's not injured. He's okay, but he hasn't played much. Same goes with Puri Ali Ganji. Of course, he's had a long-term injury. Now, this is going to be the longest camp we're going to have before the World Cup. I would have called up any player that I have in my mind for the World Cup, even if they're not going to play, but just to be around the camp, to see how they are, how they're going to train, the chemistry with other players. So I'm surprised that Ansari Farad, if he is genuinely able to train, was not called up. The same with Puri Ali Ganji. It would have been a good chance to bring him back into the fold. And the fact that he's not in here disappoints me, let's say. Yeah, it could have been a good chance to have him around. And those are the two, let's say, questionable decisions in terms of key players missing, because we know that Ansari Farad is definitely a key squad player. And in terms of leadership, is probably the main leader of the squad. So if physically he's able to be around, then he should have been around, in my opinion. On the centre-back partnership, I think they've played there before, obviously, at Persepolis. So it's not a new dynamic. That was probably the basis of them being the preferred partnership for Skocic at the beginning of his reign. I think it's their spots to lose, but Majid Hosseini will have an opportunity. He's playing with Kayserispor quite regularly, probably had a decent first season where they made the cup final as well. So let's see how he plays against Algeria, because most likely he's going to be playing that game. Puri Ali Ganji, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to, let's say, cast aside one of the two favorites, Kanani and Khalilzadeh. But I hope that both Hosseini and Puri Ali Ganji get chances before the World Cup, because I genuinely think at least one of them should be starting at the World Cup.
Now, amongst all that, there was the matter of planning this preparation camp, and it has been a chaotic one, to say the least. So, to begin with, we had a friendly game organised against Canada, which was later cancelled. I think Arya is particularly disappointed with that one, so I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts on that, Arya. But there was also issues with, for example, SLL players being called up, which caused a misunderstanding between Skocic and the SLL camp, where the players played for SLL in the final game of the season. And then Skocic decided to drop them from the squad because of that, and then they were later replaced. There was the rumors of the Uruguay game happening in Uruguay for Iran to fly out and play against them, which would have been a great opportunity to play against a very strong opposition, which didn't happen. And finally, the camp was moved to Doha in Qatar with a last-minute friendly organized against Algeria. So there's a lot that's been happening, and I'm keen to get stuck into the details. But Arya, I was wondering, what do you make of all this? Who's really to blame for this lack of organization? Of course, there's been blames to Skocic, for example, who apparently rejected the opportunity to play against Uruguay, but there's also the Iranian Federation, who, as we know, have a track record of causing these issues. But for you, where does the blame lie?
Look, there's no doubt that the Federation are trying. You know, we're not trying to say that they don't do anything. Of course they do, and the reality is there are limitations within Iran that makes it hard for this federation to do things freely. We understand that. We're not going to try and lie and say that's not true. However, having said that, this game with Canada was organized. As soon as it got organized, it was on social media that this game should get cancelled. Everyone was talking about it. The reason being, I think we can kind of go into it very briefly. Of course, a couple of years ago, the PS 752 flight got shot down, and that was a flight that had Canadian nationals on it that were killed, and quite rightly they were unhappy that Iran were coming to play in Canada. I can completely understand it from their perspective. Nothing taken away from that at all. However, the game got cancelled, and it obviously wasn't great from a footballing standpoint that it got cancelled literally 1 week before the game. So, as I said, when the game got announced, they had a lot of things going against them. People were speaking about this game getting cancelled. It did get cancelled. In my opinion, the Federation should have used that time wisely to look for alternatives and a plan B. They didn't. They might say, yeah, we had Doha as an option, but really, I mean, come on, you didn't have any friendlies organized. So you went on a flight to Doha and you just got a hotel there. That's basically what they did. So the reality is there wasn't a plan B if this game got cancelled. It got cancelled, and as I said, they went to Doha and negotiated with various national teams in Africa, such as Congo, Cameroon, South Africa. None of them got over the line. Now we have Algeria, which is a good game, but at the same time, that's only one friendly. So, and I've said this before on our spaces recently. As I said, not spending time to look for our plan B, a contingency. The Federation have spent an entire month looking for foreign sponsors to come in and sponsor the national team's jersey for the World Cup. They had the Iranian sponsor Mahdi, who was previously called Merouj. They sponsored the national team towards the latter stages of the qualification. Their quality of jersey wasn't particularly good, so they were looking for a new sponsor, such as Joma from Spain, Kelme, various other ones, Jacko from Europe. So they had brought in samples from Europe all the way to Iran. They paid for these things to happen, a lot of negotiating. What happened was they spent an entire month negotiating with these sponsors, and then they realized we can't pay the import tax. It's too expensive to pay the import tax, which is fine. But I mean, they realized it a month later, and then what happened? They said, "Oh, we're just going to keep Majid as a sponsor." So they wasted valuable time doing things that they don't need to do. You know what I mean? So when we say that we're blaming the Federation, we're blaming them for not using their time effectively when they know they're under pressure and under limitations. So that's a real issue for the national team.
Babak, am I right in saying this is not the first time you've witnessed this with the Federation and with Team Melli in general when it comes to preparation? But how does this differ to previous times, and what do you think could have been done better, and what can we do from here on to make sure that we get the most out of the time in training camp?
Not the first time, won't be the last time either. To be honest, I stand on a different, let's say, position compared to Arya. I listen to him. He's very passionate about it. I think that the Canada organization could have been a good friendly when you think of the US game. When a game is canceled for reasons that we heard a week before the game, and to expect the Federation to have had a plan B when their usual plan A is already half-assed, let's say, usually, it is too much. I think we have to be realistic. If we want to sit here and just to crucify the Federation, we can do it, and we'll spend here many hours talking about all the mistakes they do. But in this case, I would say it was, let's say, naive to set up that friendly and thinking nothing would happen. Like Arya said, yes, they were naive, definitely. But the alternative, and going to Doha for 2 weeks, honestly, guys, I have to say, it's not so bad. I guarantee you the facilities are far better than in Uruguay or in Canada. That's one. the training facilities, Aspire, etc. They are world class, really, and that's why you regularly get clubs and countries going there. Not just because the Qataris like to spend money on them, etc., but the facilities are genuinely great. So that's one. Second thing is by avoiding long trip to, let's say, Uruguay for 27 hours or whatever it is, and then spending one game more, they would never have spent this amount of time doing quality training and let's say team bonding, etc., etc. So I think it's clear this is not just about the friendlies, it's about the team bonding. And I think Todd said that as well. It's about the players getting along with each other and bonding with the staff as well. So being together for 2 weeks, just like you do in the tournaments, yeah, it's important. So I think that a lot of good work could have or may have happened potentially on the training ground. And that's arguably going to be more important than what you learn in the friendly games. From my perspective, for a team like Iran, I mean, we have a lot of players playing in Europe. I think we could probably guess 7 to 8 of the starting lineup if everyone is fit for the World Cup. So it's not like you're experimenting so much on which players come in and out. So the game against Algeria could be one option for us to see things that we want on the pitch. And in September, we could have 1 or 2 more games. I'm not too, let's say, too down about it. I'm quite excited to see what will happen against Algeria after 2 weeks of training together for this group of players. So I'm a little bit more optimistic, which is probably rare for me. But
What did you just say, Babak?
Don't tell Pegman. Don't tell Pegman. But
I've never used that word in your life.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen on the pitch. Of course, hey, it may all be shambolic and we can't get 2 passes together, but I think that this could have done good. There's been a lot of, let's say, little murmurs coming out of previous camps about how Scottish is and how the coach is, etc. And this could have been an opportunity to set that right. And let's see. I mean, it's no different to previous preparations that we've had historically, other than arguably with Kirosh. Although even on the friendly front with Kirosh, we were quite subpar. Let's be honest. We didn't play enough, and people used to create these conspiracies that he didn't want to play friendlies and get found out or lose and then lose their ranking. So it's not like we had too many friendlies under Kirosh or too many quality friendlies anyway. So let's keep the jury out and see how it goes on the 12th.
Arya, by the way, I kind of agree with Babak, and I think if the time is used effectively, the training camp can be really helpful. But it's on that point that I want to come to you, Arya. We stand in the current position that we're at, and we have the friendly against Algeria. We've got 2 weeks of training camp. If I was to speak to you in 3 weeks from now, and you were to say, this is what I wanted to see, this would be the best case scenario from the training camp, what would it be for you? What would you think that Iran, Skocic, the players, Team Melli as a whole can gain from these 2 weeks? And I add a little bit of a kind of another point to this question, and that being that, you know, when I look at the squad, I notice names that I feel like in not necessarily in the long term, but in the as we approach the World Cup, they wouldn't necessarily be involved in the final list, or they might not even be considered for the list. And I mean players such as Mahdi Shiri or Surush Rafi, even, for example, or even possibly Omid Ebrahimi, who I've always enjoyed watching him, but suddenly being called back, you wonder if it's just to make up the numbers. So how would you want to see these 2 weeks used, and what would be the best case scenario for you?
Look, this is an important time for Iran's preparation for a number of reasons. We've just finished qualification. We lost to South Korea. Of course, we had players missing, but it's an opportunity, as Mario taught it on the interview, that it's an opportunity for us to just clarify things that went wrong. Brush up on mistakes that we made and use this time valuably to just make sure that when we go to the Algeria game, when we go to our friendlies in September, that we have our plan. We have our plan set in stone. Because when you come to November, you do not want to be out of options. You want to be able to have plans, tactical plans that are going to be useful against teams like England, like USA and Wales. Under Queiroz, again, come back to the last World Cup, there was a clear plan. 100% knew how the team was going to approach these matches. And we knew that there was always going to be a certain style that the team was going to have to play. The coach was demanding it. I would like to see Skocic now, from today going on to November, start to nail down his formation, nail down what he believes are his 15, 16 key players that he wants to play in November. Of course, a lot of them are missing, but he still has a lot of them there that are going to play in the World Cup and going to be important for him. And I want to be able to see in this game against Algeria, are we able to not, how do I say it, fight adversity? If we do get a goal down, are we able to come back? Because there will be times in November where we will go a goal down, and it's all about showing that ability to get back in the game. Even under Queiroz, we didn't really do that, so there's things that we kind of have to show now so that we can get the fans' faith back in the team, So again, using this time wisely to find our tactical plan is important. That's it. That's all we can really say, because ultimately that's all we can do just now.
Now, I want to move on to our game against Algeria. But first, let's hear from Walid Ziani, the Algerian football journalist who caught up with Arya.
All right, I'm joined by a good friend of the podcast, Walid Ziani from DZfoot. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast. We've known you for many, many years. Never actually got you on the podcast, but obviously now that Algeria is playing Iran on Sunday, we can get you on. First of all, give us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do for DZfoot.
Yeah, so I've been covering Algerian football for, I guess, almost 20 years now. Time flies. I started with them a long, long time ago. I'm doing a bit less now, more social media, but always involved with Algerian football, news, interviews, social media. I've been covering Algerian football for a long, long time. So, I think I have a good amount of knowledge and understanding of the context of Algerian football and African football and Middle Eastern football and stuff.
Perfect. Obviously, the last time Iran played Algeria was before the World Cup in 2018. It was in Graz in Austria. I actually went to that game. That's actually my only Iran national team game that I've been to. And, of course, because of that, Algeria has a soft space in my heart. Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I remember it. I actually didn't watch it because I was on vacation in Malaysia and the game was at like 3 a.m. or something. Yeah. And I planned on waking up, but obviously I did not wake up because it was 3 a.m. So, but yeah. I did watch the highlights and I remember the game.
Yeah, it was a good game. It was a good game. It was, Iran won that game.
یک زد به سر دیدنی و توی دروازه چقدر قشنگ زد گل و سردار آزمون حرکت از احسان آیصفی همینجا تو به جلو میبره موقع بازیکن ایران پاس طارمی و گل دوم. بله چقدر خوب کار کردن بازیکن ما. گل دوم مهدی طارمی میزنه. 2-0 برای تیم.
I think Mahrez actually played that game as well. He didn't actually play too well that day. I remember he didn't have a really good game and he won't actually be available on Sunday. So speaking about this Algeria squad, obviously there was a time where they were doing really well. I don't know how well they're doing nowadays. Can you give us a little bit about that?
So it's funny, actually. We played you guys 4 years ago, right before the 2018 World Cup. We're playing you again right before the 2022 World Cup. Yeah. Similar context in the sense that Iran is qualified, Algeria isn't. However, I think that's where the similarities stop, in terms of the two friendlies. In 2018, we had a coach who he wasn't a first or second choice. He was let's call it a political appointment. A coach with not a lot of success, who didn't have the backing of the fans or the players. It was a very tumultuous time for Algerian football. Compared to 2022, yes, we didn't qualify for the World Cup, and we're coming off a disastrous African Cup campaign, but it's a very different context in that our coach has been around since 2018. Jamal Mahdi was appointed in, I believe, August 2018. So this summer is going to be 4 years, and it's been a long time since we've had a coach who's been around for 4 years. And of course, he led Algeria to the 2019 African Cup title, our first title since 1990. And of course, he led the team to a 35-match unbeaten streak, one of the longest streaks in the history of international football. I think it was second or third, behind only Italy and I can't remember the other ones, but one of the longest unbeaten streaks in the history of international football. So things were going great up until the African Cup in January, where we failed to win a game in a relatively easy group with Sierra Leone, Equatorial Guinea, and Ivory Coast. But that wasn't, most people were really looking forward to the World Cup qualifiers in March. And that's really what most people were interested in. Unfortunately, we actually won the first game in Cameroon. We got the hard part out of the way. We went to Cameroon. We won for the first time ever in the history of Algerian football. We won in Cameroon, and it was Cameroon's first loss at home in a long time. But unfortunately, we lost the return leg at home, 1-0 in full time, and then 2-1 on aggregate. We scored in extra time. Cameroon scored on literally the last play of the game. A lot of controversy surrounding that game, but at the end of the day, we failed to qualify. So with that being said, it's a very different context. I think Belmadi is this Iran game is an opportunity for him to test new players. So we're not going to see I think some of the regulars. And if we compare it to the 2018 game, only 3 players from that game might potentially participate in the friendly on Sunday. So that's Issa Mundi, who's the defender for Villarreal, Islam Slimani, who's a striker for Sporting in Portugal, and Rami Ben Sebaini, who's a left back for Borussia Mönchengladbach. Like you said, Mahrez is unavailable for this one. He pulled out with an injury right before the camp. And we actually, this international window, we have 2 African Cup qualifiers. The first one was against Uganda. We're playing another one, I believe tomorrow, against Tanzania in Tanzania, before the team travels to Qatar to play against Iran. So the Iran friendly is really an opportunity for the coach to test out some new players, because I think we're almost starting like a new cycle for Algerian football. I think Belmadi was trying to qualify to the World Cup with his core group. That didn't work out. So I think for him, he's trying to refresh his squad, trying to find some new younger players. So I think we're going to see some of those players against Iran.
So you're not expecting to see like of Ismail Benasser, Adam Younas, Rashid Ghazal?
Well, I think we might see them play a little bit, but I don't think they're going to get, I don't think his main objective is going to be to win that game. I think for him, the 2 qualifiers that we have before the Iran game are really the important ones, and I think he's going to use the third one as he's going to experiment a little bit. Although I do expect Ben Nasser to play. I expect him to at least feature. I don't know if he will start, but I do expect him to feature.
Fantastic. Okay, and this is a game for Iran's World Cup preparation. Do you think this game? How do you think this game will benefit Iran going into the World Cup?
Well, unfortunately, I know Iran's World Cup preparations have been. How do we phrase it? They've been upended a little bit.
Limited.
Yeah, very limited. Yeah, I'm actually based in Canada, so I was looking forward to the Canada-Iran friendly. That was unfortunately canceled due to let's say politics. So that was a bit unfortunate for Iran, because I think that would have been a great test against a young, promising Canada squad. Although Algeria will be a good test as well. We have a very good squad. We have a coach that he's very demanding. He really asks a lot from his players. He has a very set style of play. So I think it's going to be a good test against a very organized, very technical team. I don't know if it really fits into Iran's World Cup group. And I don't remember your exact group off the top of my head.
USA, England, and Wales.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, in terms of football, I'm not going to say that we we necessarily play like any of those teams. But for Iran, it's going to be a good test. To test their ability, to see where they're at. Like, it's going to be a good litmus test for them. So they're still playing against a good team, one of the better teams in Africa, one of the better teams, in the Arab world.
Yeah. Can you give us a prediction for this game?
I'm not very good with predictions. All my predictions somehow end up wrong. So whatever I say, probably take the opposite. But with that being said, I think Iran has the upper hand, just based on where you guys are. You guys are going to a World Cup, and the players really need to impress with about 5-6 months to go to the World Cup. So I'm gonna say, you know what? I think it'll be a similar score to the last game. Iran 2, Algeria 1. But I think it will be close. I just think Iran has the edge just because you guys are way further ahead in your cycle. Obviously, you guys are going to World Cup. For us, it's a newer cycle. So I'll give Iran the slight advantage in this one. But I'm expecting a very entertaining game. Iran plays great football. Algeria plays good football. Even though some of these newer players, we don't really know how they're going to perform, but having seen them with their clubs, I know they do play a nice blend of football. So looking forward to it.
Well, I really appreciate your time for coming on Global Zan. Can you shout out your social medias and how to find you on DZfoot?
Yeah, so if you're on Twitter, you can follow me, Walid Ziani. My ad is BYLKA613_. But yeah, if you just type in Walid Ziani, you can usually find me. I also run the DZfoot English Twitter page as well. So, either of those, you can find me. And yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite. And, wish Iran the best of luck at the World Cup.
Moving on to the Algeria game. This is a team that we have played recently, in preparation for the 2018 World Cup. Arya was actually at the game. Babak, I'm gonna come to you first. Is this a good preparation game when you look at the opponents that we have in the World Cup?
I can split that into two. The first part, is it a good preparation game? Yes. Algeria is one of the best footballing countries in Africa. It's clear. They were African champions, the penultimate edition. If the lineup when I look at their lineup today against Tanzania, if most of these players are playing, then I think it'll be a good test for our players. The second part of your question was, when you look at our opponents at the World Cup, then I would say they're probably not like any of them. Canada could have been a bit like the US, obviously. And if we really want to be technical, then we should try to make it a friendly with Scotland or Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland in September, because that would sort of mimic the Welsh, a little bit maybe the English style.
I'll stop you there, Babak, just for 1 second. I will say that a lot of those teams you just mentioned will have their schedules absolutely packed for the Nations League. That's why they'll be probably unavailable in September.
Yeah, that's a good point. But those are the kind of friendlies that I would have been looking to make, and this could have been a potential opportunity. But of course, like you say, they've got schedules set up. So when you consider that, which is a valid point, then you're left with very little option, and it's probably mostly outside Europe. And if that's the case, then Algeria is probably among the best that you can probably muster at a week's notice. So I think overall, this is the best of a bad situation, and we should just wait out and see how it goes on Sunday.
Arya, as I mentioned, you were at the game back in 2018 against Algeria. So again, comparing Algeria to the team that it was in 2018, the way we played against them at the time, and now when you look at this game coming up, how would you compare it, and what kind of opponent did you see in Algeria back then, and what do you expect in this upcoming friendly?
Well, back then, I think as Walid said on the interview, they had a team that, they had Mahrez playing that day, but he didn't really play that well. The team that they had back then wasn't particularly good. They had a coach that, again, as Walid said, was only in for political reasons. It wasn't really something that they wanted in charge. Now they have, Mahdi, who has not done too badly, not done too great either for them. This team, the good players, great playing all over Europe. Ismail Benacer just won the Italian league with AC Milan. Very good players. But the reality is, in this game, the coach could, as Walid said, they could play more reserve and sub players in this game. So as much as I would like to see them play a strong team, it might not be that difficult for Iran, and that could be, not that, it's not what you want. You want a team to come out and give you a bit of a challenge. So I hope that, we do see a little bit of their kind of talented players, maybe Rashid Ghazal. He could start the game, but at the same time, we need to be able to also, win the game. So I think this game is going to be a good test for Iran, but I really want them to be challenged too.
So looking at it from Iran and Team Melli's perspective, considering that this is the only friendly we have in this window, Babak, how would you like to see us line up? I know there's a lot of players missing, as well as both you and Arya mentioned earlier in the conversation. Would you, for example, like to see Skocic play the strongest team that he possibly can? Or would you like to give some of the younger players a try, maybe players that haven't had a chance to show what they can do?
No, I think that he should play the strongest lineup he thinks is out there from that camp. And if the young player that you mentioned, for example, now has a chance, as in with a reckoning for the World Cup squad, and he wants to see how he performs at international level, then so be it. Give him a chance. But it shouldn't be done just for the sake of it. So one thing I would be interested to see is to see Al-Aryar, Said Manesh play somewhere around the top. We've got a lot of players missing, as you know, so it could be an opportunity. I would like to see him get more minutes than just the usual 15-20 minute cameo. Would be nice to see how he could potentially complement Mehdi Taremi and Sardar Azmoun, because I think he could be a player that if he settles in over the next few months in England, could have an important role to play at the World Cup. So that's definitely something I would like to see. I would like to see a different centre-back partnership, and we know we will get that because of the missing players. So Majid Hosseini, let's see who he partners him with. It'll be interesting to see who he puts in goal. Obviously, it's probably Abedzadeh, who is just about ahead of Beiranvand right now, and Beiranvand's just returned to Persepolis, so that would give him a chance to come back into top spot if he has a good few months in Iran. So that would be an interesting choice. But overall, I think there are one or two areas. Central midfield, another one. Is he going to experiment, or is he going to go for, let's say, Saeed Nurullahi and Haj Safi, which would be the blandest choice, let's say? Not to take anything away from Izzatullahi, of course, who is probably the key player in the hearts of the team. So there are a few areas where, let's say, Skocic's selection will illuminate what he's thinking, but overall, it should be a time to experiment only to answer, let's say, the questions he has or the doubts he may have over one or two players, rather than just looking at that bloated squad for the camp just to give players chances for the sake of it.
Arya, I'm going to come to you on the back of that question. So how would you, again, like to see Iran line up? I think Babak mentioned a very good point in terms of the centre-back partnership, because as you alluded to earlier, we are missing Khalilzadeh, Pouraliganji and Kanani. So Majid Hosseini, I would be really, really surprised if he doesn't start. And if we go with the assumption that he does, who would you like to see beside him?
Well, the only player there that's kind of been part of the squad recently and is a centre back is Arif Gholami, who's, he got one cap against South Korea, was at right back, didn't play particularly well. He's had a good season for Esteghlal, from what I'm hearing. I've not really watched too much of the games. From what I'm hearing, he's had a good season, and obviously they did win the league as well. So he could start, for example. Obviously, Noor Afghan did play there as well at one point in the qualification. I can't remember who it was against. He could play there. And then Armina Sorabian and Arif Agassi, the other two, but I don't see them playing. They're both uncapped. So, yeah, for me, I would play probably Arif Gholami there to just try him out, because in the day, you never know. Kanoni could get injured. Purali Gaji might not come back, early enough. It could happen. So you might need another centre back in there. So, yeah, it would be good to see Arif Gholami starting. And, I think the team itself should be quite complete. Of course, there's no Salman Ghoddos, but ultimately the forward line is there. Osman and Taremi haven't played together for, I think, over 6 months. They've both, either one of them has been missing each time there's been a game, and this will be the first game that they'll play together in quite a long time. I wonder if Skocic will.
That's the key for us. That's the key.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that partnership is going to be the key for the whole World Cup.
Yeah. As Mario talked in the interview, that is what they're trying to aim to.
Yeah, under Kirosh, you always wondered against the bigger teams, would we give them the ammunition? And that's where we fell short sometimes. But with Skocic, it's a little bit more expensive, and you would hope that if they get the way Taremi and Osman have been informed this season, especially Taremi, if they get those chances at the World Cup, you would probably bet on them putting them away.
Yeah, and I wonder if Skocic will revert to a 4-4-2. Actually, our formation he's not played for a little while. He's been playing 4-3-3 quite a lot, again, because of the Osman Taremi not being available. One of them always missing. So it would be interesting if he goes 4-4-2. Then, will he play Arya as a wide midfielder? Ali Golriz has had a bit of an injury in camp, so he might not start the game for precaution reasons. Javanbakhsh hasn't had a great season for Feyenoord. Disappointing for him, actually, despite actually going to the final of the Conference League. Hasn't a great season for him. Personally, he could still start, being one of the captains of the team. And then, Safi has been quite good at left back for AK Athens. He might play there. You never know. Noor Afghan, hasn't had a great Asian Champions League recently for Sepahan. That could be a reason why he gets dropped. So there's options for Skocic in this game. Now, obviously, I would love to see Omid Ibrahimi play. I think he's very important to this team, despite not being part of the qualification too much. I think he should probably get some minutes there. Hossein Zadeh has had a very good season at Esteghlal. I'd like to see him play as well.
Do you think Omid has a role to play at the World Cup at 34 going on 35?
Yeah, look, the age is obviously a big one, and no doubt about it. But at the same time, we don't have that many midfielders of his quality. Give me a guy like Milad Salak or Ahmad Nurulahi. These guys, they're probably good, in terms of their physicality and getting up and down the pitch. But when you talk about keeping the ball, keeping possession, I don't see it from them at all. Whereas Omid has that in him. Even at his age.
What about Mehdi Pour?
Mehdi Pour is a guy
he's done decent in the games. I know he's only had a couple of appearances, but he's done decent in those. Do you think that this camp is important for him in the sense that he could be picked over someone like Omid Ibrahimi and all the experience he's got?
Absolutely. I think Mehdi Pour showed some good things in that game against South Korea and against Lebanon. A player who clearly has great technical ability, can pass the ball, can shoot from distance, and also a set piece specialist, which we don't have a lot of in the team. So he could be very good. Obviously, he's not very experienced in the national team. He's only had 2 games, as I just mentioned. So despite a good season for Esteghlal, I want to see him play more in the national team jersey. So hopefully he does that on Sunday as well. Other than that, the next question, I think, from Sina, we'll come on to that in a second.
Yes, so we actually do have a question whilst we're on the topic from Twitter, and this pickup for Life 10, who has asked, should Hardani start over Moharrami as he hasn't been playing regularly?
For me, yeah, I think he, although Moharrami is I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a like a liability if he plays regularly. But when he doesn't play regularly, we've seen there's been times where he does become a liability at times at the back. And, I think it's a good chance to see a guy like Hardani play this game. And we can make as many subs as we want to. It's a friendly. It's not a qualification game. We can make subs so Moharami can come on in this game and still have an impact. So I would like to see Hardani play, but I wouldn't mind seeing Moharami get his game time that he hasn't been getting. And that's a similar point I want to make about Beyrand and Obadzadeh as well, because Obadzadeh, although he's been playing regularly, Beyrand hasn't. So the question is, which of them actually needs this game? Does Obadzadeh need to play? I mean, it'd be good to see him play, but Beyrand probably needs this game more than him. So that's why I can see him playing Beyrand in goals.
I think the one thing Skocic has almost been consistent about throughout is if a player is not playing at his club, he doesn't usually play him. And that's something that whether it's domestic or abroad in Europe, and it's happened with quite a few players, to be honest with you. So maybe Javanbakhsh is just on the periphery of that theory, because he's not been a regular player at the club, although he comes on almost every game at least. But so with that token, that's why Beyrand not in, and then it's possible that, like you say, Hardani might get a chance, although you both know who I think should be playing right back, and he's not in the squad. And he's the kind of guy you want with you on the battlefield if the going goes tough. And Cristiano knows him quite well, but I'm not going to name drop him here.
Yeah, we've brought up too much on this podcast. But the other point I want to make is interesting how he brought in Mahdi Shiri instead of Donyan Esmaili first, who had a very good season for Sepahan at right back as well. So interesting selection there. I don't know what you think, Sina.
Yeah, I agree. Esmaili, to be fair to him, has done quite well for a few seasons now, and he was even around during the time of Khafouri and Rami Rezayan, and it was really difficult to knock those two off. But now I am a little bit baffled as to why he's not be getting those opportunities, especially if someone like Mahdi Shiri is getting picked over him, someone who is, I think, 31 years old now. He didn't necessarily do that great at Persepolis and then was ultimately replaced by Rezayan. So I agree with you. And as I mentioned earlier as well, it seems like there's a few names in there that will probably not be considered when the time comes for him to pick the World Cup squad.
We should mention Ali Alipur as well. We should mention Ali Alipur is back in the team after a long time. He's not been in the team for a long time, and he had a very good season. Not very good, but he had a good season for Maritimo himself personally.
It's a step up for him.
And
to be honest, I didn't expect it. So, and he's got a transfer out of it as well.
To Gil Vicente. So, good to see him play back in the team. I think he's kind of deserved it.
Very good point that you mentioned. The reason I say that is because, we often, and I'm guilty of it, we sit down and we talk about the players who, especially the ones who move out of Iran and maybe don't settle the way that they should, and we get disappointed by their efforts. So when something like this does happen, where he was probably disappointed with his start in Portugal, I think we all were, and we were expecting him to move back to Iran, as a lot of players previously in his position had done so. But to work hard to find his feet and do as well as he has done, and like you said earlier, he does deserve the call up, even if he doesn't get a game, or even if he's not considered for the World Cup. I think this call up is more or less a recognition of his efforts, and I think we should recognize that as well.
I don't think that Skocic is the type. I mean, I think anyone he's called up, they are in with a shout. So depending on how they do in the camp, and then how they do at the beginning of next season with their clubs, and obviously injuries can happen, and the opportunities are there. I mean, if you look at the Alipur situation up front, you've got Zahedi, Rezai, and Sarifad. All of them have big question marks next to them right now. Zahedi arguably, yes, he's injured, but he's never been getting the game time for Iran. So it's possible that someone like Alipur could sneak in if he has a good start of the season in Portugal. What I wanted to say, though, was that the biggest doubts on this team come on the defense, which is very different to the Queiroz era, of course. at the moment, you would be hard pressed to predict the back five for the first game. Left back, there's a big question mark. Right back could go either way, could go anyone. Center back, okay, logically, Khalilzadeh and Kanani are his favorites, but anything can happen with Majid Hosseini and then Pourali Ganji coming in, and goalkeeper, we don't know who's going to start. So the disruptive nature of the back five is not so good. It's the one area of the team where you want some stability and you want the players playing with each other. So that's going to be an area to watch.
I think he has tried to be like consistent with Khalilzadeh and Kanani. I personally just don't think that Khalilzadeh, for example, is at the quality the national team wants. That's my opinion. I think he's a good defender. I don't think he's bad, but I think a guy like Majid playing regularly in the Turkish league is at the quality, and he's getting the right experience to play against a team like England, for example. I just don't see how playing in Al Ahly week in, week out, or Al Rayyan, for example, week in, week out, is going to be beneficial for our player that's going to go up against. It's
not only that, he's 33 or 34.
Yeah, exactly, at his age.
There's so many factors to it. Yeah, and who do you want to be marking Harry Kane, for example? Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's not of that quality, and it doesn't matter if he's playing for Al Ahly today or whomever. He's at that stage of his career where you know what you get with him, and it's erratic at many times. And even in the qualification games against the UAE, we were very lucky because he made a couple of crazy decisions. Actually, both of them were all over the place, but he doesn't give me any faith. And for me, Kanani, I can sort of make my peace with it because he's been consistent and influential for the team. But definitely someone like Hosseini or Pourali Ganji has to partner him. And if they don't get game time together before the World Cup, you would argue that Skocic may go back to his, let's call it, the safety net of knowing to know each other.
I asked Todd this question. I said, if Kanani is going to miss this game against Algeria and then potentially the next game in September, whoever it's against, I said, is that going to be, a detriment to your back line? He said, yeah, it is. And that is a big talking point there because Kanani is his pillar in defense, Skocic. Missing him for these preparation games can be very detrimental. I'm not saying it, and I'm just being honest, it is, So hopefully Majid takes this opportunity to kind of show himself.
I agree with both of you. I think defense is something that's under Skocic hasn't been too great, not just in terms of the inconsistency in the lineup, putting aside the Khalilzadeh and Kanani partnership, but also I think in terms of tactics and the way he's approached games, there's been times where we've been a little bit confused as to what the aim or how the team is trying to defend against teams. So it would certainly be interesting to see that in the Algeria game. And that's exactly my next question, actually. Look, we all know football nowadays, whether it's club or country, or whether it's friendly or an official match, it's the victory that matters. We all want to see a result. However, putting aside the result, what are the key factors you would like to see in the game? So what would be the key performance indicators, if you want to call it that would make you optimistic for the World Cup and for the preparation between now and then? And Arya, I'm going to come to you with this one first.
Look, as you said, we need to try and win the game for confidence, but I do want to see us creating a lot of chances. I don't think we've done that in qualification, creating meaningful chances, being productive in the final third. It's kind of being a bit of hit and hope, get it to Osman or Taremi and just try and score a goal that way. That isn't good enough for me. For a national team that's first ranked in Asia, there has to be more to their game. You have to be able to show a little bit about yourself. I think we've got players like Syed Manesh who can do that, create width, create a bit of panic for the defenders 1v1. That would be great to see. Golriz hasn't also had a great season for Charleroi, but he's a player who's obviously got that left foot, wand, who can make chances happen. But we need to see it more from him. Javanbakhsh is similar boat as Golriz. Can we create chances from a wide area? if we're going to play Osman and Taremi together, get it to them. But one of the things that I think is very key with Osman and Taremi, and Babak, I want to get your point on this, when they play too close to each other, it almost becomes difficult for them to find space. There's been times where I've noticed that when they're very close as a duo, they kind of cancel each other out and they can't really get into positions they want to, and they get marked because it's too congested. I believe if it was up to me, I would go 4-3-3. I would put Taremi as like an inside left player and just off Osman, just to create a little bit more space in that position, because if we can do that, they'll score a lot of goals, no doubt about it.
Yeah, could be. I mean, maybe in fleeting moments, but like you said earlier, they haven't played together for a long time, and you almost forget how it was. So I would watch this. I would watch it, and I would think that you would want them both closer to the center of the field, where they can be influential and cause the most damage, like they do for their clubs. So I'm actually leaning towards having Taremi closer to the middle rather than moving him too far left. But a good point, and it's something I'm going to keep an eye out on Sunday.
Guys, I'm going to ask for your predictions. Babak, this must be your favorite part, so I'm going to go with you first. What do you think the score will be?
I think it'll be a draw, maybe 1-1, but I'm not really concerned about the result unless it's, let's say, unless we crush them or they crush us. I think it's going to be more about answering some of the questions we all asked each other here today. So looking at the defensive lineup, looking at who plays in the middle, in the midfield, and how the partnership or the chemistry up front is. So I think that's more important at this stage of our preparations.
For me, knowing Skocic, knowing what he's done in qualification, I'm expecting a surprise in the lineup. Maybe even seeing Mahdi Hosseini from Mesut Afsan John starting. Okay, for example. But on a serious note, I think Iran should do well in this game. As I said, Algeria probably won't play their first team. So we should keep possession, and I think if we can create one or two chances for Osman and Taremi, who are actually on form, I think we can win the game, similar to the one in 2018 where it was 2-1. Osman and Taremi both scored a goal in that game. I think that could happen again.
Guys, it's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure as always. Before I wrap it up, do you have any final points that you want to make at all, Babak?
No, I think it's been a while since, let's say, we've watched the national team, and it'll be good to put behind the drama of the past few weeks and just focus on what's on the pitch. So I'm looking forward to the game on Sunday.
Yeah, similar. Yeah, similar. Look, I think it's good to see the team play. They needed a friendly, and they got one. So it's a good friendly. It is a good game. Hope the fans enjoy it. I hope we get to win the game. That's important as well. And make the most out of it, because this is the only game we're going to play in June.
Like I said, I appreciate the time both of you put into this and giving us your insights. Now, as we said, can you actually confirm when the game is again and the timing of it as well?
Yeah, so Sunday, June 12th, at the Suhaim bin Hamad Stadium in Doha at 9 p.m. local time. So that's 7 p.m. UK time. Perfect.
Now, as always, I would expect you that you will be holding a live Twitter space as well before and after kickoff.
So we will have a Twitter space for sure before the kickoff. So please join us on that. Perfect.
I'll definitely be listening to that one, and of course we'll return with the analysis of the game and more exclusive interviews on the next episodes. I hope that you've enjoyed listening. As always, give us your feedback, tell us what you thought on the points that both Arya and Babak made, and yeah, stay tuned and follow us on all social media podcast platforms, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Nice one.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray from ESPN and EA Sports. You're listening to Bezan podcast.